Hello all, Frost Central here again, back with another video, and this time we're going to be talking about one of the most popular fights not only in JJK, but in the last year for Shonen manga. The Honored One versus the Fallen One. The strongest sorcerer of today versus the strongest sorcerer in history. The Showdown at Shinjuku. Satoru Gojo versus Ryomen Sukuna. For this video, as I'm writing it, it's probably going to be a longer one compared to anything else, especially because I'm writing this and editing the script over the course of my last few weeks of my fall semester. We'll be talking about the build-up to the fight itself, talking about the narrative significance behind it, and then I'll talk about my stance on the fight as a whole. Obviously, there are manga spoilers ahead for anime onlys, so if you don't want to get spoiled, stay off of Twitter and click off the video. This is going to be a long one, so let's get started right away. The build-up towards the fight started since the third chapter of the series. Sukuna first declares that when Yuji's body is his, Gojo will be the first person that he tries to kill, and Gojo then says that he'd win against the full-power Sukuna. Afterwards, through the rest of the series, we see these characters show off more and more of the unbelievable, batshit insane things that they can do, with the fight between Jogo and Gojo, the revelation of the limitless, the six eyes, the infinity, the unlimited void. These things that demonstrated how Gojo was at the apex of the world of sorcery, the origins of the strongest in the hidden inventory, his ascension against Toji, the reverse curse technique, blue, red, hollow purple, then Gojo's absolutely insane 2012 Heat vs Celtics Game 6 LeBron-like performance against Jogo, Hanami, Maito, Chozo, and Kenjaku were the only thing that stopped him from wiping all of them out at once. It wasn't even the civilians around him because of him pulling out a domain expansion of 0.2 seconds, which had never been seen before. The only thing that stopped him was that the scourge of the Jujutsu world, Kenjaku, was possessing his best friend's body. That caught him off guard and allowed him to be sealed within the prison realm. Then Sukuna's reign of terror, with beating the shit out of the finger bearers, scaring Mahito, the disaster-cursed spirit of humanity, with his raw aura, displaying the first ever domain expansion in the series. Then his 1990s Cavs vs Bulls Michael Jordan-like performance in Shibuya as soon as that demon got 15 fingers of the boy's body. His absolutely disrespectful beatdown on Jogo. His legendary fight against Maharaga, showing off Cleave, Dismantle, the Black Box Flame Arrow, and Malevolent Shrine. The first domain shown without a barrier. Then him taking over the body of Megumi Fushiguro, not only taking his body, but his curse technique as well, the 10 Shadows, towards the end of the Culling Games. Keeping up in a 2v1 with the now awakened Maki Zenin, and the enraged Yuji Tadori, taking out Angel's arm, killing Ryu Ishigori, then beating Yorozu using his newly acquired 10 Shadows, and using it better than Megumi ever had before, even showing off new Shikigami and taming Maharaga. Everything that these two titans in sorcery had done in the story, and everything everyone said about them, aided in the build-up to this insane clash of the titans. Gojo, whose infinity left him untouched by all he did not want to touch him, the ability to retract, repel, and erase with the blue, the red, and the hollow purple techniques, the ability to minimize energy consumption on top of it all with his six eyes, then his unlimited void, which allows him to upload so much information to his opponent that effectively paralyzes him in place. Sukuna's Cleave and Dismantle, which allows him to cut and destroy all manner of objects. The secret technique, only now referred to as the Black Box, which grants him access to fire arrows, capable of nuking the disaster-cursed spirit of Flames himself, Jogo, potentially an array of other techniques and secrets that it may hold and now access to the 10 Shadows with an army of Shikigami at his disposal, with the option to fuse them together and make even stronger Shikigami, and access to the 8-handled sword, Divergent Sela Divine General Maharaga, that can adapt to any and all phenomena with a turn of the wheel on his head, and his open barrier domain expansion Malevolent Shrine, which has been described as using the very air itself to paint on as if it was a canvas, not needing an enclosure, and able to cut and destroy everything tracking his radius. It was even the very technique he used to annihilate Shibuya and Mahalo. These legendary kits, these insane arsenals of ability, bestowed upon these two, were all at the end of their seats, frothing at the mouths, seeing their legendary battle finally come to fruition, to finally see these two gods of the Jujutsu world finally come to blows. And how did that battle start?
Uchihime's cursed technique is Solo Forbidden Area. It temporarily amplifies the total cursed energy output of one willing sorcerer in its range, including Utahime herself. To excel at Jujutsu is to excel at subtraction. The degree to which a sorcerer can omit the intonation, movement, and other elements that comprise or activate a cursed technique determine that sorcerer's skill. But Utahime leaves nothing out. Words, gestures, dance, music. Elevating the cursed technique to the level of a ritual boosts its potency to 120%. The strongest sorcerer in history faces the strongest sorcerer of today. The first blow will determine which of the two is the challenger. 9 ropes, polarized light, crow and declaration, between front and back. Hollow. The strongest sorcerer in history faces the strongest sorcerer of today. Just so there's no misunderstanding, let me set you straight. You're the challenger here.
Damn punk. This battle started off in one of the most insane ways to start off the battle. Gojo launched his strongest attack in the series with 200% output as a warm-up, letting us know instantaneously that this fight in Jujutsu Kaisen was going to be generational. The next chapter immediately continues the hype, having Gojo and Sukuna started off with some wild trash talking. Sukuna calling Gojo a nameless fish about to get his scales peeled off, and Gojo calling Sukuna out and taking Megumi's body to get him worrying, then saying he'll mourn him after killing Sukuna. Chapter 224 consists of some of my favorite chapters of hand-to-hand combat, because it's nothing but these two throwing hands for 16 pages straight, with Gojo launching Sukuna through buildings with Limitless, and even throwing large chunks of debris from those buildings at him. Sukuna using Dismantle like his Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho to cut a building in half, and then they start fighting through a falling building like it's nothing. This is one of the moments from this fight I'm most excited to see get animated, because I want to see how Mappa will be able to make this seem cooler than it already is. The next chapter starts with us seeing the main cast watching the fight and observing the fight, speculating on it themselves and how Gojo and Sukuna will take each other out. Then the first of many domain expansions happen, and they clash. The first next slice that had everyone scared, always thinking that the fight ended there. People even started being full-on doctors going into anatomy to fully explain why Gojo would have died here, or just RCT it back to normal. Then chapter 226 drops and we see their fight in the domain. And then we all turned to page 4 and saw...
I'm glad. With regard to curse technique, I'm overwhelmingly stronger.
I think this page was really the moment that had people watching this fight have full faith in Gojo absolutely dog-walking Sukuna in this fight, as he tanked all of Sukuna's slashes and was still standing. Every other time we saw the kitchen get summoned, we witnessed Sukuna just cook whatever was unfortunate enough to be in the radius. But we saw Gojo stand there and say, wow, this technique is kinda ass, as he got hit rapid fire with the slashes. Then they get back to fighting before Gojo whips out a simple domain to negate Sukuna's slashes to get back to healing. Then they keep fighting with all of his comrades watching at the edge of their seats before Gojo makes what was once thought to be impossible possible. Once you use a domain expansion, you normally can't use your curse technique unless you are Satoru Gojo. He managed to use reverse curse technique to heal his burnt out curse technique, blasting Sukuna with a red, sending him flying and destroying his shrine, leaving the audience and even the prodigy, Hiro Okotsu, the second coming of Satoru Gojo, speechless as to what he just witnessed. These first 3 chapters served as the perfect way to launch this fight and get everyone ready at the edge of their seat to witness what Gege Akutami was cooking for the rest of this fight. After the 2-week break, chapter 227 was dropped and everyone was at the edge of their seat, waiting to see what could happen. Everyone attempting to rationalize how it was possible for Gojo to restore his curse technique in the first place, as Gojo and Sukuna get involved in another clash of domains. Gojo managing to change the conditions of his domain again, however, to make it stronger against external attacks, but Sukuna works around the domain by clinging onto Gojo to avoid the unlimited void's sure hit until he breaks it again. Now faced with the rapid fire of Malevolent Shrine again, Gojo reveals another technique he had under his spell, the anti-domain technique, Falling Blossom Emotion. The crowd speculates further on what Gojo can do from here before he opens his domain once more, doing something never thought possible before. Changing his domain's conditions to swallow the massive range of Malevolent Shrine, before leaving 227 off on a cliffhanger, Gojo managing to shrink his entire domain to the smallest we've ever seen it before. In 228, everyone thinking what Gojo had done once thought to be impossible for his reveal that in the time in the prison mill came in handy in allowing Gojo to envision a small enough space being able to contain himself and Sukuna at the same time. Then we cut back to their fight in the domains, for Sukuna's domain collapses completely due to the sustained damage he had received from Gojo, as the unlimited void was broken as well from the outside. The two of them get back to fighting in hand-to-hand while trying to use RCT to recover their burnt-out techniques and fix the damage it received. Gojo then thinks about this fight and questions Sukuna's tactics before. Gojo's nose starts to bleed and his eyes grow more dazed, leaving us terrified and scared for around a week before twitching again in 9 drops. The chapter starts with Yuta acknowledging the nosebleeds and Gojo wiping the blood off his face with another domain clash between them, knowing Sukuna can also repair his burnt-out curse technique. Then we cut back to the Peanut Gallery, where one of Gojo's win conditions is revealed: destroy Malevolent Shrine in 3 minutes or less. Then we cut to their fight in the domains again, Gojo dominating the fight in martial arts completely, fighting Sukuna, even having the other characters acknowledge Gojo as a superior martial artist between the two of them. Then their domains break at the same time again, where Gojo and Sukuna clamor for another domain expansion battle again. Then Yuta and Higuruma both notice something. Due to needing to heal his physical damage before his burnt out curse technique by 0.01 seconds, Gojo's domain was slightly faster, and thus unlimited void hit, and in 2 minutes and 40 seconds within Gojo's domain, Malevolent Shrine collapses. Sukuna is stunned, and all Gojo needs is to land the finishing blows before Maharata swaps places with Sukuna and manages to adapt to and shatter the unlimited void before Gojo could try to one-shot it. Then chapter 230 dropped the following week, revealing that the way Maharata adapted was the same way Sukuna got him to adapt to Irozu's construction, by bearing the burden of adaptation, but instead of using himself to adapt to unlimited void, he used Megami's soul as a shield for adaptation. Then Gojo quickly realizes that Sukuna and Megami's souls had yet to adapt to an unlimited void, that his next attack would finish Sukuna off. As he reaches to activate his domain, Gojo suffers another severe nosebleed and fails to open the domain expansion due to the fact that in his attempts to replenish his technique, he was quite literally destroying his brain, then using RCT to restore it. And if you've been paying attention to this fight, Gojo did this about 5 times already. Sukuna gloated further, and right as he was about to open his domain, close the barrier, and then kill Gojo with Malevolent Shrine. Before opening his domain, he says, "Goodbye, strongest sorcerer. Turns out you were lucky to be born in an era when I wasn't around. That's why you're so mediocre." Domain expansion. Then his domain expansion blows up in his face. Despite being an unlimited void for less than 10 seconds, it still affected Sukuna, and the brain damage he sustained made opening a domain for him pretty much impossible. Then the fight gets back on as Sukuna thinks back to Yorozu and her attempts to teach him about love. Then we cut to 231, where Gojo starts it off by dragging Sukuna across the battlefield before throwing him away before they get back into close quarters combat. Then we see Gojo pull off after him, which is around Sukuna, Sukuna, trying to catch him off guard. But Sukuna picks the right Gojo and tosses him away before they start trying to figure out what the other has planned next and what they're thinking. They then continue with their battle before Gojo reveals Sukuna needs his wheel to spin 3 more times before Mahoraga adapts to Gojo's limitless technique. Then we move on to 232 with the battle still going, getting more and more intense as things go on. With Gojo relying on just his limitless blue laps in order to avoid the rest of his techniques getting adapted to as fast by Mahoraga. But Sukuna only has 1 turn left before the adaptations are ready. Gojo tries to catch Sukuna off guard with a red, but Sukuna uses domain amplification in order to minimize the damage, but it pauses his adaptations. We're left with a brief second of worry over Sukuna blocking the red, for Gojo reveals it didn't explode yet, right as red comes around the corner and blasts Sukuna in the back. Then Gojo rushes him, preparing a strike, applying cursed energy in 1/1,000,000th of a sec, causing it to flash black, performing the first black flash to happen since the one that Yuji used to put down the scourge of humanity Mahito in their last clash. And this black flash is stronger than any other before it, because it was performed by none other than Satoru Gojo, knocking out the King of Curses with 1 black flash, with his momentum only getting stopped by the simultaneous rise of Mahoraga from the shadows, ending that chapter off with a bang. Then chapter 233 came out, revealing that Gojo's starting to slow down. His reverse curse technique output is dropping due to his brain damage. Then we see Gojo think back on the last time he's been pushed like this by sorcerer killer Toji Zenin. Then Gojo rushes back into the battle, now fighting Mahoraga, hitting him with a strong 1-2 combo, pushing him away, then starting his chance to recover the lost output he has in curse energy to destroy Mahoraga in 1 blast with a red, before Sukuna covers Mahoraga with a rabbit escape as Gojo nukes the rabbits with the red, aimed at his shadow. Then Sukuna tries to give Mahoraga cover by tossing a fire hydrant at Gojo, and letting those 2 clash as he sneaks Gojo with a piercing blood style pressurized water jet using Max Elephant's technique. Sukuna providing support for Mahoraga and attacking as soon as Mahoraga negates Gojo's defenses. Then the 3rd member of Sukuna's team to jump Gojo pops out. Sukuna uses Nue, Orochi, Round Ear, and Morn Tiger to make a totality, and Chimera Beast Agito. Then they get back into the fight, with Gojo fighting all 3 of his high-level opponents at once. The chapter ends as Gojo realizes he had no other option but to annihilate the 3 with the unlimited Hollow Purple technique. Chapter 234 comes, and then we get back into the fight with Gojo analyzing Agito, recognizing how its regeneration is now a problem as well as Mahoraga's adaptation. It needs to get 1 shot. Gojo handles the 2 Shikigami relatively well as Sukuna watches the battle from the shadows, trying to heal, even stating that right now a Hollow Purple would be fatal for him to take on. He praises Mahoraga, asking him to show him more, to show him what he can really do, before Mahoraga cuts Gojo's arm clean off with Sukuna's cleave technique. The battle rages on and Sukuna joins the clash again, and it looks like Gojo's finally on the back foot until he gets hit by Agito. Gojo then turns around, looks at it, and hits it with a black flash and then a maximum output blue, ripping through the building they were fighting on the side of and obliterating Agito in 1 shot. Then, chapter 234 ends with this.
41 seconds from now, for the 2nd time, Satoru Gojo's Hollow Purple will cut through Shinjuku.
Then chapter 235 releases and opens with
a 2nd black flash in Satoru Gojo's vaulted guard picks up. Meanwhile, the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, is uneasy for the first time in a millennium.
Gojo hits another black flash on Mahoraga, before running back and blitzing Sukuna with a strike, then launching him into a building. Then hitting another black flash on Mahoraga, sending it back before starting his chance to use red. Sukuna predicts this and he readies Mahoraga to take the force of the red, where he realizes what Gojo was planning, sending the limitless red up to the sky to merge with the same blue he used to crush Agito. Sukuna panics and screams for Mahoraga to chase down the technique, where Gojo uses the attraction powers of blue to let it drag him up, which didn't affect Mahoraga due to its adaptations. Then Gojo sent him back with an uppercut. Then Sukuna appeared desperate, trying to make the red explode with the piercing water, but Gojo was simply faster and started his chance for the blue to make the technique expand and consume the water. Then the 2 techniques began to converge as Gojo started his chance, with us briefly cutting to Yuta saying that if he was out there with Gojo, he'd only hold the Honored One back, as Hollow Purple is unleashed and carves out all of Shinjuku, enveloping Sukuna, Mahoraga, and Gojo, erasing Mahoraga and his Dharma wheel completely, leaving Sukuna on his last legs, and leaving Gojo with battle damage. However, due to the numerous black flashes Gojo had hit before, his output had returned and was able to heal himself back, with Sukuna now in low output for healing, no Mahoraga or Agito for help, and too weak to try fighting back with domain amplification against Gojo. It looks like Gojo had won. Chapter 236 spells the end of this fight, where the impossible happened to occur. Sukuna used Mahoraga's adaptation not just to breach Gojo's infinity, but to use him as a model, sort of as a YouTube tutorial as to how to cut through infinity. Instead of targeting Gojo himself, he targeted the world itself, space, in order to cut through him, and it worked. Gojo was left cut in half, and the battle of the strongest ended here. You were magnificent, Satoru Gojo. I shall never forget you for as long as I live. Before we get into my thoughts of the battle in its entirety, we have to break it down narratively. The main thing going on in this battle is with Gojo's sense of identity and the question of if he's the strongest because he is Gojo, or if he is Gojo because he is the strongest. Gojo is trying to truly figure this out in this fight because of the gap that has grown to form around him, distancing himself from all of those around him due to his overwhelming strength. In one of the chapter extras, when everyone is asked their thoughts on Gojo, the thing that they all agreed on the most was that he was solely the strongest, nothing else. In Jujutsu Society, as the sole first user of the Six Eyes and Limitless in centuries, he had been burdened with keeping it safe as its protector since birth. He was so important and revered because of his technique. Now, out of every sorcerer, he was handpicked by Tengen himself to escort the Star Plasma vessel because of his Six Eyes and Limitless. Kenjaku deemed Gojo as such a threat that even after sealing him in the prison realm, which he was confident Gojo wouldn't be able to get out of, knowing that leaving it means death for almost anyone else, he threw it at the bottom of the ocean and stacked as many cursed spirits as possible on top of him to make sure he didn't interfere and kill him before he could execute the plan. All Gojo has been to most people is the wielder of the Six Eyes and Limitless, the Honored One, and the strongest since birth, with only a few people being able to comprehend him beyond that and after his awakening. That gap only grew further until he lost some of the only ones who could understand him, even just a little bit. This is the entire reason why Gojo had been actively trying to raise the next generation of the strongest with Yuta, Hikari, Megumi, and Yuji. Not only so that he could reform Jujutsu Society and create stronger sorcerers than even him, but also to make sure that they wouldn't end up like he did. Simply known for their titles and alone as the strongest, instead now being the strongest squad together. The only person that could then understand Gojo, or even attempt to, besides the group he had been trying to raise, was Sukuna. And the very battle between them was Gojo trying to get him to understand. That's why there's a few panels where it seems like they're almost kind of chill with each other. It's because they're the only ones who could even come close to knowing what it's like to be them. This battle is the closest thing to them finally being able to show off their full bags. Well, we know now that Sukuna has more in his bag, and I do somewhat believe Gojo had even more shit in his bag. This, to both of them, was their first and last time to really be able to go all out against an opponent that wouldn't just instantly get folded. I'm going to attempt to make a comparison to a scenario in real life. Let's pretend you are a really observant person and you recognize that someone you know is a little off and no one else can see it, despite things being so clear to you. So you started feeling isolated and maybe even a little bit insane or paranoid because of what you picked up. Then you meet someone who has the same realization as you about this person. You will instantly feel a lot more stable in what you realize about the person, because this new guy is just as observant as you and notice the exact same things. You're not alone in what you realize now. That same feeling is probably what Gojo felt while he was fighting against Sukuna, that now he can finally be understood. That is why Gojo dying against Sukuna in their fight is one of the better ways to end his character, because Gojo can finally get that answer to the question given to him by Ghetto and die not as the Honored One or the strongest. People can finally just see him as Satoru Gojo, proclaiming his identity through his own death and finally giving the protector of the Jujutsu world his long-deserved rest. Personally, this fight might be genuinely one of my favorites in JJK, if not all of Shonen. One of the only fights in JJK right now that even competes is the final fight between Yuji and Mahito. Gege was in his bag with this fight, not only in terms of art, but themes, choreography, and pacing. Everything around this fight has damn near made it generational. I can't think of a fight in recent Shonen that has even come close to keeping me as excited and hype as this one has. Even the audience around it has only amplified how insane it was to read week by week. I remember staying up late till like 1 a.m. for the leaks to read the fight, and waking up to see jokes surrounded either about Gojo or Sukuna or Maharaga. The slander on both sides was generational and was probably the funniest a JJK fanbase will ever be. If I could go back in time to relive the week by week jokes and slander for the first time again, I would, simply because that shit was actually just hilarious. Sukuna getting called a 10 Shadows merchant every week was actually insane. I love this fight, but that doesn't mean I don't, so I have a few issues with it. For example, the ending. I love every chapter of this fight. It's done beautifully, but chapter 236 still feels pretty off to me, even after reading it the first, second, third, and even fourth time for this video. Before any of you claim bias on my side for Gojo, saying I'm a fanboy and that I can't handle losing one of my favorite characters, 1. I read CSM. 2. I went week by week knowing deep down with this fight that Sukuna was going to win. There was no way that this story progressed narratively properly without Yuji being able to have a final fight with Sukuna, or Gojo still being alive or not nerfed or incapacitated in some way. I knew going in, as soon as Gojo got out of that box with his taper, he was going to get fucked over in some way for narrative purposes, and also for the fact that Gege does not fuck with Gojo at all. However, the way he went out does not feel fitting for how important the character is. His death was effectively off-screened, and it feels wrong. We end off the previous chapter with Go to the borderline perfect position to win, and then we cut to an airport with him and Ghetto. This could be fixed with a chapter in between easily, and Gege just didn't write or draw that chapter of that fight. If there was that chapter where they at least made this death more ceremonious, or at least showed Gojo getting bisected, it would have aided and mitigated the discourse around the fight. Unfortunately, we were not lucky enough to get that. People on both sides agreed initially when this chapter was released, it was off to see based on how 235 ended, especially when looking at this fight and seeing Gojo not hit just 1 or 2 or even 3 but 4 black flashes and still lose. Like, that is just insane and feels almost disrespectful to have happen. Honestly, I heard the opinion once that Gojo's brain should have exploded instead of him getting cut in half, and I do kind of agree with it, but for Gojo's character to kind of get wrapped up, he had to die to Sukuna. But maybe through a different route than Sukuna getting the ability to cut through space suddenly. In terms of problems, I think another issue is less narrative reason and more plot. Why did Gojo not already know about the open barrier domain that Sukuna has? We know Yuji was capable of recalling Sukuna's actions in Shibuya because he knew what Sukuna did and saw it, and was capable of assessing what he did and comparing him to Yuta at the perfect preparation arc, saying Yuta would win. So why wasn't Gojo made aware of the open domain he had? So the amount of clashes and brain damage that Gojo had to undergo would be minimized. That feels off to me and feels like crucial information that would probably need to be shared for the sake of victory for the Jujutsu sorcerers. Otherwise, I love this fight, and I think it's done very well and is probably the best in JJK right now. It's an amazing fight that has a few problems and issues that hold it back from being a perfect one. Gojo vs Sukuna is one of, if not the best fights in Jujutsu Kaisen. It honestly might be the shonen fight of the year. Nothing has come close in terms of raw hype and intensity. I don't think I followed a manga week by week with this much anticipation and excitement before. This fight was truly generational and will be remembered in the future for its impact, and I can't wait to see how the anime will handle this, as long as it's not another feature-length film. I really hope that it's not a film. Just an hour-long special, and it'll be done perfectly. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It lets me know if I should come back for good or not, producing videos, or if I should just occasionally drop something or go back into the shadows. A special thanks to my friend Kari for doing some of the narration and lines for Gojo in the vid for me. He helped out a lot, especially since this video was being produced and finalized for a while. Anyways, that's all for now. I'm gonna hit the hay after producing the video. Frost out. Peace.